If you are a solopreneur, you may find at some stages that you are either reaching a point of overwhelm or burnout, or maybe you're just not really progressing towards your overall goals as quickly as you would like to, and indeed as quickly as you may feel would be possible. And there is a number of reasons for that, which I'll go into in a moment, but certainly it's something that I'm no stranger to as well. And so I've got a whole guide about the outsourcing mindset and how you can start to leverage outsourcing to platforms like onlinejobs.ph, to Fiverr, to Upwork, to really start to build a virtual team using virtual assistants. So that's what we're going to be covering in this live stream. So I want to just start with talking about the couple of reasons why you should potentially want to be considering outsourcing as something to add into your current setup, into your current solopreneur journey. So let me just switch over to this here because I've got some stuff here. So I want to talk about then the outsourcing mindset. And what I'm sharing with you now is actually an excerpt from the outsourcing masterclass, which I've created, which I'll talk about a little bit later. But this is basically some of the stuff that I've covered in module 1 of that course. So first of all, talking about why you should outsource, and actually referring to the course itself is going to be a good way to explain this. So first of all, we're talking about how to grow your business without burnout. But then that other one down there, which is that the course is a complete guide to hiring virtual assistants and freelancers to free your time and focus on what matters. And that is the critical one there, because all too often we find ourselves focusing on maybe you could say the wrong things, but certainly things that are detracting from our core revenue generating activities that we should be performing. So that is what we're really trying to overcome here, is those two things, not ending up with overwhelm and burnout, and also giving us the time to focus on what matters. And by the way, that's focus on what matters in the business, but also focus on what matters in broader terms in, family, friends, hobbies, those sorts of things, because it's also all too easy to end up overwhelmed and taking on far too much so that you are having work-life balance sort of out of whack there. So that's what we're looking to resolve with this. Now, there's a great book that I want to just recommend to you, which is called The E-Myth, and I'll drop a link to it in the chat. But the E-Myth is all about this concept, and by the way, the E stands for entrepreneur, and it's this entrepreneurial myth where people start doing something that is their passion, something that they love to do, and the sort of fable that they use all the way through the book is somebody who loves baking. So they set up a bakery and start selling cakes, and they really are enjoying it from day one. But then what happens is they get busy, they start having to take on more people to help with, serving in the shop, for example. Then they start having to get into the whole human resource management, terrible term, but that sort of idea of, managing the staff. They have to get into the accounting side of things, maybe the marketing side. And all of a sudden, this one thing that was their passion is then sort of dwarfed by all of these other different roles, these different hats that they're wearing in their business. Now, of course, this is talking about as you scale and take on people. So is that not at odds with the whole idea of outsourcing and taking on people? Well, the point to take in this sense from the book is just the fact of where it is you're spending your time, what it is that is your sort of superpower, and make sure that those are the things you're focused on yourself rather than all of the minutiae. And just being aware of all of those different hats that you are wearing and then getting people to fill those roles instead, so that you can focus on that one core thing, that one core value that you are offering. So that's the E-Myth. I highly recommend anybody who's in business, or maybe indirectly, maybe as a content creator or something like that, looking to build out a business from your content creation journey, then definitely go ahead and read that book. Now, this brings us back to this idea of, focusing on what matters. So I just want to also highlight something which is nothing new here, but maybe you're not aware of it, which is the Pareto principle. And this is this concept that you've got some sort of effort that is going in and it's generating results. And obviously, all of the effort and time that you're putting into your business is what is driving all of those results. But in actual fact, if you really look at it, you can say that more like, and this is obviously a really broad sweeping generalization, but it's this concept that 20% of the effort, or the smaller amount of the effort that you're putting in, is actually generating the bulk of the results that you're getting. And you can find this too in your business. I mean, certainly for me, if I think about my content creation and then course creation, education and then the Digital Stage Academy and things like that, working with consultation clients and coaching clients. Those are the things that are really generating revenue in Take One Tech. However, I am still having to do minor little email management, database entries and things like that. And those are the things, those smaller tasks are in that larger 80%. So really you need to be focused on that 20% and then all of this other 80% of the work that you're doing, in broad terms, obviously, it might be 78, might be 90, but those are the things that are really ideal for you to begin to outsource. So those are the sort of broad reasons why you should be doing it, is just this idea of avoiding burnout and giving you time to focus on what matters. Now, there is this idea then that there are lots of reasons why maybe you shouldn't do it, or maybe it's maybe you're telling yourself these myths. So I want to get onto those in just a moment, because I think it's really useful to sort of address those head on, because some of them are maybe obvious myths obvious reasons, I should say, but there's other ones that can kind of sort of creep up on you almost. So if you want to take a look at this, the 5 myths about outsourcing, there is this one which I've got to say I think is probably the most common, which is that no one can do it like me. And when it comes to outsourcing it, you might think, well, it's only going to take me 5 minutes, but it would take me 2 hours to tell somebody else how to do it. Well, obviously, the sort of long-term effect of that is, yes, maybe an individual task might just take you 5 minutes where it'd take you time to train somebody. But obviously, if it's a task that you're doing repetitively, then the time saved in the long run is vast by comparison. The other idea is that, you may well have your core superpower, your core skill, the value that you're offering. And that may well be then the thing that you retain. But it's all of these other things that we end up doing that aren't necessarily our core skill. Maybe your business is in whatever, but you find yourself creating a website, creating graphics, things like that you may well be good at, but that aren't necessarily your core skill, but certainly are not something that you couldn't get somebody else to do for you. So the idea that nobody can do it like me is just frankly a total myth. You can certainly get people to help with at least some aspects of the business, if not the one thing that you are the only one in the world that can do. Now, the next one is I'm not ready, because it sort of feels like a commitment. It may also be a case of thinking that you've got to reach a certain financial milestone before you can do that in terms of turnover or revenue. It may also be that I'm just too busy with other things. I've got to, launch this particular product or project or whatever. And so there's these ideas that you've got to reach a certain point before you can then go into, having somebody to help you. Another one is maybe I'm not ready because I don't have all of the documented systems and processing and things like this. It could be, that's something that I've told myself before is, well, what I need to do is just put in place these processes. I'll figure out the process myself, and then at some point I'll document it so that I can have somebody else do it. Well, in actual fact, you don't need to have your complete operating manual for your company before you actually take on help. In fact, that would be a great job for somebody else to do, in fact, where you can just take them on doing a little bit at a time. You're not necessarily having to commit to somebody, and then they can even start building out your standard operating procedures for you. So you don't have to commit everything to the beginning as well, which is just the number 3 myth there, which is, I'm just not ready to commit to this financially. It feels like, maybe things are not quite so stable in your business if it's a completely new business, and you just, again, need to reach those particular milestones before you consider taking on someone. Well, the fact is, with the platforms that I'm going to talk about today, you don't have to fully commit to anything from the beginning in any case. You can just take on somebody that's going to be working maybe 2 hours a week, 3 hours a week, and they're going to just be doing some of those tasks that are taking up your time away from those high revenue generating tasks. Now, what you've got to also bear in mind here is every hour that you outsource is not giving you an hour back of productive time on those revenue generating tasks. It's actually really multiplied in terms of the return that you're getting. Because bear in mind the Pareto principle again. Those tasks that maybe you're getting taken up with are actually low revenue generating tasks. So if we think about it in terms of revenue, you're potentially getting somebody else to do some $10 tasks for you. But when you come back to actually then work on the high value stuff, you might be generating, hundreds of dollars in those hours that you are able to then focus on that. So just bear that in mind when you're sort of weighing this up, is every hour saved is multiplied in terms of the revenue generating capacity for that time that you have if you're working on the business. The other thing is, and this is one that I fell into, so I'll give you a bit of a backstory of my recent journey with outsourcing, my previous journey with outsourcing as well, which is that you love doing it all yourself. And so I'm perfectly happy here. I love doing every aspect of it. So it doesn't feel like maybe you're not feeling overwhelmed, you're not feeling burnout or anything like that, but you just really enjoy the whole process. Well, the fact is that is great if you are in that position, but the problem with that is that you are then limiting yourself in terms of scalability, because the fact is, one person cannot do everything all themselves, even if they are, loving it, because they will find themselves having to focus on those low revenue generating tasks. So if you're looking to scale more quickly, reach financial goals more quickly, then you are going to want to sort of be outsourcing, again, those low value tasks. The other thing is, I tried it once before and it didn't work. So that is always the case. Sometimes we get burnt by these things and then don't go back to try it again. Well, what I would say to that is certainly, outsourcing does work. Certainly using virtual teams does work. And so maybe it's a case of just that person wasn't the right fit. Maybe it was a case of the way that it was implemented wasn't the right fit, or the platform, or the onboarding process, or something like that. There will be some reason why it didn't work. But I can say that it's definitely worth sort of reconsidering and taking a look at again, because it really can have a profound impact on your work, your business, and indeed your life as well, coming back to that sort of work-life balance thing. So just accepting that all of these things are actually myths that are a block to the growth of your business. Basically, anybody can do this, because it's just a case of not needing to overcommit to it, just taking it step by step and beginning to outsource those tasks that are not really driving the growth. Now, I just want to talk about my recent journey with this, because it's relevant and hopefully you can learn from my mistakes here. I'm going to talk a little bit about some platforms that you can use for outsourcing. So one of them is onlinejobs.ph. I'll just drop a list of the platforms in the thing. One of the platforms is onlinejobs.ph, which is for finding workers in the Philippines. There's a cost differential in there in terms of wages, so you can find really cost-effective workforce in there. There's another one called Upwork, and there's another one called Fiverr as well, which I'll talk about in a moment too. But I set up my accounts with these in about 2016, and I actually used them heavily for quite some time with a completely separate business that I was doing at the time. And really cost effective, really worked well. But then with Take One Tech, this actually started out as a sort of hobby project. It started as a YouTube channel, a way for me to practice the process of making all of my videos in one take with no edits for some course content that I was actually creating for one of those other businesses. And so it was just a hobby. It was just something that, wasn't really intended to or anticipated that it would go to where it is right now. And it's kind of evolved over time into, first of all, creating the first course, then multiple courses, then creating the Digital Stage Academy and all of the other things, and the coaching and consultation and stuff like that. And it's basically become the thing that I'm doing full time. And it grew in such a way that I didn't even really sort of notice how much I was taking on, and didn't also notice how much I was committing to. And it was only when I reached a point relatively recently in the past sort of I guess from sort of May onwards, that I'd got a product launch. If anybody has been waiting for the Ecamm Live Masterclass, which is finally out, will know that the launch of that got pushed further and further down the line. And that's just because of the way that my working week is structured, in terms of I've got Wednesday to Thursday are for coaching calls, client calls, and then also the Digital Stage Academy. So that time is sort of serving clients, and then Monday and Tuesday is my sort of focus time. I have time blocked out two days to really focus on like the actual creation of courses and new material and stuff like that. And it just so happened that over a period of 13 weeks, completely outside of work, something always seemed to come up on those Monday and Tuesdays. My son was sick, my wife was sick, I was sick, something else happened. And there was various different things that sort of cropped up that just swallowed up that time. And so there was me then sort of feeling that I was then scrambling to try to catch up with not just the course content, but the minutiae of running a business. And sometimes those are the things that really have to take priority, or at least it feels like it. You've got to answer the emails. By the way, I've got behind on my emails as well at times. So you've got to answer the emails. You've got to do all of these little things that feel a little bit like firefighting, and not having the time then to focus on those broader tasks. And it just felt kind of ridiculous to me that I got to this point. And by the way, what I did as well was I sort of plotted out the sort of journey I'd been on. And I won't bore you with all of this, but just in terms to give you an idea, this one here, this is my sort of journey with Take One Tech. So starting the channel, first digital product launched in May, first donation through Buy Me a Coffee in May, first channel member or Buy Me a Coffee member in June, one-to-one coaching call in June. So the coaching, by the way, if you're doing anything on YouTube, always have a link for people to book a call with you if it's in any way educational, because as you can see, within the first month I'd had my first coaching call and then had many more throughout the rest of the year. Reached monetization level in December of that year. Now it was in 2022 that I started really sort of taking Take One Tech more seriously as a business, and so I launched the Ecamm course, the Zoom workshop that I delivered with Ecamm, live streamer backstage podcast launch, speaking at Ecamm Leap into Podcasting, launched Creators Pod podcast group with some friends, Rodecaster Pro 2 masterclass launch, did a Stream Deck giveaway, and got my first sort of long time annual coaching client in December. So that was a pretty busy year in terms of it felt like almost every month there was something happening. Well, 2023 was the same kind of story, in fact. And so I launched the Academy, did an Ecamm Advanced workshop, a week-long workshop on the Ecamm channel, Rodecaster Duo giveaway, Stream Deck masterclass launch in June, Discord Beginner's Guide course in July, Kajabi accelerator course in July. So you can see here that there's like basically every month there's like one or two major events, major launches, and then all the way down to January of this year, January, February, April, speaking at 2 different events. And then I reached this point here of May, June and July. It was just like, it felt to me like crickets, and it felt really that I had lost a huge amount of momentum. Now there's a couple of things you can take from this. First of all, I would say that I was committing to too many things, because as much as so many things got achieved in this time, there were obviously, well, I say obviously, maybe it's not obvious, but I can tell you there were lots of things that were missed. There were lots of courses that were supposed to have been launched that weren't, because I was basically over-committing to everything as well. So there's another thing at play here, which is not just this concept of outsourcing, but it's also being conscious of how much you are actually taking on. And there's a great book by Cal Newport called Slow Productivity, which I read in around this time, in around my quiet period. And it really hits home to me. And it's funny, isn't it, how you can hear something many times and it not really sink in, or the penny doesn't drop. But then sometimes it just takes the message to come through at just the right time that you need to hear it for you to actually accept it. And what the Slow Productivity book is talking about is basically taking things down to, focus on one major task at a time. One major project, I should say, for like the quarter. Now, it's funny because if you think about the books like The One Thing, there's another book called, there's actually a couple by Michael Hyatt, and I can't remember which one is which, but it's either Your Best Year Ever or Free to Focus. I think Free to Focus is the one that specifically talks about focusing on one thing per quarter. Your Best Year Ever from him talks about breaking the year down into 4 quarters and then focusing on one task as well, like one key milestone. The other one would be the 12-week year, which essentially is saying rather than set goals for the year, it's easy for things to slip until the last part of the year. So instead, set goals for your 12-week year, which is effectively a quarter, and have one big milestone that you're working towards. So, getting slapped around the face with this message time and time again, it took reading the Cal Newport book for me to actually finally realize that, probably I have been overcommitting to things as well. So it's worth just sort of noting that as a contributing factor to the burnout. But in any case, it got to this point of real feeling that I was being unproductive. I was still delivering on client calls, coaching calls, stuff like that, and the weekly sessions that we have in the academy. But it was critical that this course that was due out in May didn't end up getting released until August because of this. I could also put August on here and put that one as the ... as well. But so it really took this for me to realize that, yeah, I should just not be doing all of this myself, because in instances where things crop up, as they did for 13 weeks, basically, then it's important to have some other people that can help keep the wheels running and keep the thing running. And then also to be able to then focus on those revenue generating activities that should really be your core focus. So that's a little bit about my story. And so when I got to this point and reading this book and reaching this point of, I mean, it pretty much was overwhelm. It was feeling like, you know, I'm so behind on this and it just keeps getting kicked down the road. Yes, that I needed to outsource, and it just felt so ridiculous to me that when I went to go back into onlinejobs.ph that I'd had so much experience with before, and I saw that, yeah, you know, I set up my account in 2016, and it's this thing where you sort of pay for it while you're using it. So I was paying for it for 18 months and hired dozens of virtual assistants through that for some projects, real estate investment project work that we were doing at the time in terms of research and things like that, and used them to great effect. Before Take One Tech, and sort of slightly during the beginning of it as well, I was developing an app with a couple of partners, and it was actually an algorithmic trading platform, and I developed the mathematical model for the platform, and so we wanted to get a web app developed for that to be able to offer this as a service. And we were dealing with people that we'd found through Fiverr, Upwork, and then that led into dealing with their entire agency that they'd got behind them. And again, you know, it worked to great effect, getting everything all developed out. So I felt myself a few months ago sort of kicking myself for not having spent a little bit more time thinking about, yeah, maybe I should just do what I know how to do anyway, which is outsource this thing. And of course, in my architectural design and construction company that I ran for a decade here, I'm no stranger to, you know, managing people, managing teams and contractors and things like that as well. So I fell into, though, the point of this is this classic trap of, I actually just love doing everything myself. I love the content creation, but I also love the design. I love designing logos. I love designing thumbnails, designing the website. I love all the back end stuff, figuring out the systems, and those, you know, the problem solver in me relishes the idea of, you know, having something to figure out and going and doing it. So I am one of those people that fell into that trap. It wasn't that I thought anyone could do it better than me. I know that I'm not the best. I also, you know, didn't feel that I wasn't ready necessarily. It's just I fell into that trap of just loving doing it all myself, and that's what got me to that point of I'll say breaking point, you know, where something had to give. Basically, it wasn't that I was broken, but it was something that had to give somewhere to allow that to happen. So I'm going to go in now and start talking about like how to actually figure out where to start with this. But before I do, let me just go and say a few hellos to folks in the chat. That was a message from last time. Hey, Rich, great to see you in the chat as well as in the Zoom, of course. Hi, Rob, great to see you here too. Mark, you are living by myth number one. I think everybody does to a point as well. It's a thing, isn't it? We all often think, yeah, no one can do it as well as us, but there's probably some things that you can offload there. Hey, George, great to see you here as well. What was the book list? The one thing is, yeah, that's a great book. So the other one was, I mentioned the E-Myth earlier on, but then there was also, what was the list that I just read out? Cal Newport, Slow Productivity is the book. I will just drop that in the chat. Cal Newport. He's the one that also wrote Deep Work. I should have got the links for all of these ready, shouldn't I, really? But Cal Newport, Slow Productivity. Then there is also Michael Hyatt, and he's written a couple, actually. So one of them was called Your Best Year Ever. And then the other one was called Free to Focus. And then there's another one, I forget the author, but it's called The 12-Week Year. And that's the one that talks about breaking things down into quarters. And by the way, a quarter's 13 weeks. So the idea between the 12-week year is you break things down into quarters, you set some goals, you there's a bit of a framework in there to follow. And then the 13th week is where basically you review everything and put plans in place for the next quarter, the next 12 weeks. And so it's giving you that 1 week of buffer there to sort of have that sort of planning stage. So yeah, they are all great books. I've taken different things from each of them, but the one thing that I sort of didn't take because I felt like I knew better was, well, I don't need to focus on just one thing. I'm a multitasker. I can have all these different things on. So now I am basically having a major project that I'm focused on every quarter. I am still doing other things around it, but I'm just not having this continuous grind of, the big long list of major projects to do. So I'm being a lot more conscious about them and making sure they're in the direction of, the overarching goals and thinking about that. So just being better at saying no. Incidentally, the book that I mentioned, where has it gone? Did I put it in there? Oh, Slow Productivity. Yeah, one of the things it talks about is sometimes we make ourselves feel guilty because of our to-do list and all the projects that we're working on. And because we may well be experiencing slip deadlines or things like that, it can actually lead to, feelings of guilt, anxiety and things like that because we're not actually delivering on to ourselves, but also, to others on those expectations. And one of the things that Cal Newport talks about in the Slow Productivity book is having this idea of the holding tank, which is basically where you go through and do an audit and everything that you're sort of not going to work on at the moment or isn't that major key thing, you just sort of put it in the holding tank and giving yourself the freedom to actually say, you know what, this is something that I am just going to completely park. Now, it may well be that you get back to it, the next week or the next month or the next quarter, but just having that idea that, it's now in the holding tank and it's not something that is weighing on me anymore, just being clear on your goals. But anyway, we could go into a whole thing about goals and these sorts of things, but I'll bring it back round to the outsourcing in a moment. Hey, David, great to see you here as well. Thanks very much. Glad you like the new format. It helps keep me on track as well, because I do have a habit of just taking a question and then going off on a tangent. So it just keeps it all nice and in order and keeps me on track. Hey, Eric, great to see you here as well. So let's just continue on then, because we're now hopefully a little bit clear on the reasons why we should be outsourcing to focus on what matters and potentially, hopefully, avoid that burnout. Coupling that with being conscious about what we're actually taking onto our plates, but also into the business as well in terms of those projects and goals. Eliminated some of those myths, hopefully as well. So how do we actually go forward? Because now, let's say all of this is accepted, but we're at this situation now and say, okay, well, I want to outsource, but where do I start? How do I go about doing this? Because that then can be another source of procrastination. Often, I'll speak for myself, often when faced with indecision, then it's all too easy to procrastinate on it. If we don't know what the next step is that we're supposed to take, often we don't take any steps. So it's all about removing that friction and getting beyond that sort of stuff. So with that said, let's just think then about all of the different things that we do in our business. And so it's really helpful to consider this in terms of what is it that you're doing day to day? Notice as you go through your working week, what are all of the different tasks you're doing, and where do they fit in the sort of structure of a business? And ideally, creating your overall org chart of your business. Although at the beginning it will be just me, putting yourself into it. But there are some broad roles within the company, and so if you think about like the three different core areas within the company, you've got like the sort of fulfillment, client success, whatever you want to call it. It's actually delivering your product or service is one sort of broad area of the business, and then there are different roles within that. So a few examples of that would be service delivery. Somebody who's the client success manager, making sure that they're getting what the results out of it that they should do. Maybe technical support if you're offering a product like a digital product. In my case, courses. Maybe some sort of technical support with getting access and those sorts of things. And then you've got product development, developing the new courses, new whatever it is. I'm just obviously referring it to what I do. But those are some different roles. And obviously there's many more roles, but in that broad category of the fulfillment and client success area of the business. There are then the sort of operations and administration side of things. And so there you're going to have sort of general admin task, which is, can be something that sucks a huge amount of time and is really kind of almost the lowest level of task that you could be doing when compared with, think about spending 2 hours on general admin versus spending 2 hours thinking about new products that are going to actually drive the company forward. And then things like, bookkeeping and accounting, database management and IT and tech support internally as well. So then the other area would be growth and marketing. So this is where you're going to be able to have like the vision of what you're doing, but also creating content for the inbound marketing. So the free content maybe on YouTube or other platforms. Then, you are the marketing strategist as well. How are you got to spend time actually thinking about how you're going to promote your products and services. Social media manager, email marketing manager. All of these things take time, but actually it seems to be the lower value ones that can all too quickly sort of creep into our overall plate in terms of what we're doing. So just being aware of those different things that you do, you can then start to identify the things that are maybe adding value and are maybe not adding as much value. And then those are the things that you can start to begin to outsource. So in terms of what actually you should be focused on then, you want to think of it in terms of this. It's got to be those high revenue impact tasks. So what is it that's really driving the revenue ultimately in the business? And that would be, building client relationships, maybe developing new products or services. As I mentioned earlier, that can be something that's really highly valuable if you're going to be starting to add multiple new products that are going to be compounding the revenue generating potential of the business. Then there is creating a long-term marketing strategy. Obviously, if we're just sort of going aimlessly with our sort of head down, trying to get those admin tasks out of the way and not having a bit of a longer-term vision, then it's easy to sort of drift off course and not really achieve the things that you're setting out to do. And then finally, more high-level stuff here as well, high-level financial planning. So those are just a few of the sort of ways that you could think about it and the sort of tasks to focus on. It's those high revenue-generating activities that are going to have the maximum impact on the success of the business and the growth of the business as well. So when it comes to figuring out, all of the different roles that you're doing, all the different things that you're doing, still, we've got that question of, right, well, I'm doing everything. I'm doing so much. So where still do I actually start? I've identified what I should be doing, but I'm still left with, a mountain of potential tasks that I could outsource. So where do I start and how do I start is the next question that logically comes from that. And so that's why I created this thing that I call the case matrix. I think that using matrices like this in a way to just put things in broad buckets really helps to sort of break down a problem and just give you a clearer idea of where exactly you should focus. So the case matrix is split like this. We've basically got your specialized areas of expertise and general expertise. And then we've also then got high revenue impact tasks and low revenue impact tasks. So this is coming back to some of those myths, nobody can do it as well as I can. Well, I would say that those are going to be those specialized tasks that are specific to you and your core expertise. General expertise stuff, data entry and stuff like that, maybe somebody can't do it quite as good as you, but I'm sure that 10 people could do it 8 times as quickly and more efficiently, if not 10 times. So that's the thing, is just we want to be focused on those specialized areas of expertise rather than the general stuff that could be outsourced. And then coming to that thing that I mentioned about focusing on those Pareto principle tasks, the high revenue impact tasks, rather than the other 80% in that low revenue impact area. So in terms of where you should focus yourself then, it would be concentrate. So the C of the case matrix is concentrate on what you do best and what drives your business forward. So we've already covered that in that previous section where I talked about the areas that you should focus, high revenue impact, specialized tasks, but then it comes to these other 3 areas. So where do we start with our outsourcing journey? Well, I would say actually with the last box in the matrix, the E of case is for elevate, and that is elevating your role by removing mundane, I'm just reading it, obviously, I'll let you read it, but elevating your role by removing mundane tasks from your daily responsibilities. So it is this idea of we're just going to sort of rise above the day-to-day minutiae of the business and have other people do that for us. And the thing that's great about this, starting in this this particular quadrant here, is that, first of all, it's really easy to find people to do this. I'll talk about onlinejobs.ph in a moment, but it's really easy to find people to do these sorts of tasks. And also, you're not necessarily having to commit to this in any long-term sense. You can have somebody that's working literally just a couple of hours a week or something like that at, $6 to $12 an hour, something like that. And if you think about what your financial goals are and think about how many hours there are physically, for you to be able to work in a year, think about what is your annual goal. Take, let's say, 40 hours a week, times it by 52. How many hours is that? Divide your financial goal by that number. And in broad terms, you could say, well, that is the effective hourly rate that I'm working for to generate that amount of revenue. So then it's a case of, well, if you can get something done at a lower cost than that hourly rate, then that is the sort of thing you should outsource. Lots of people have used this as an analogy. It doesn't quite work like that. It's a very rosy way of looking at things, but it is kind of true to a certain point that you will find that there are lots of these tasks that you could literally get done for a few dollars an hour, whereas you could be better placed focusing on those high revenue generating tasks. So the first one to start then is with these general expertise, low revenue impact tasks. The next one then to focus on would be the S of the case matrix is separate, and that is separating yourself from those non-core but specialized tasks. So it's easy to go maybe above those non-specialized tasks. But when it comes to the things that you feel like you maybe you enjoy or that you're really good at that are in a certain way specialized. Like, for example, I love the graphic design element. I'm not the greatest graphic designer, but I love all of the design aspects of designing logos, websites, and things like that. And it's the case that, well, that isn't ultimately having the high revenue impact versus, something like creating the actual course. In my case, again, bringing it back around to what I'm doing as the example here. But separating yourself out from those things that are specialized, but are still having a low revenue impact. And the reason that I put this one as number 2 in terms of where to continue on your journey is that it's still not having that high revenue impact. So if you are feeling any apprehension about outsourcing at all because you're worried that it could have a negative impact on the business, then focusing on this one next is by definition a low revenue impact task. So even if it doesn't quite go according to plan at the beginning, it's not something that's having a really detrimental effect on the business in any case, although with the right process, it will go just fine in any case. So then the third one is this one, and this is the A of the case matrix, and this is accelerate. And we're talking about accelerating your growth by expanding the capacity to handle those high impact tasks. So something like this might be, helping with certain aspects of the business, like maybe social media marketing or the Facebook advertising campaigns or something like that, that's still helping to generate those higher revenues for the company. So those are the 4 quadrants, and that is a sort of framework to help you sort of decide where it is that you want to begin, and thinking about just those really low general expertise, low revenue impact tasks as the place that you want to be starting with that. So then when you want to take that further, where do you actually go to look for the people to fulfill these roles? Because that's the other thing that can be a hurdle is, well, this is all completely new to me. I don't even know how to go about finding these people. Well, before we do that, let me just mention that the information that I've just talked about there with that case matrix, there is a free PDF which you can download, and you'll find a link to it in the description of the video. I've just dropped a link into the chat. But this is the Solopreneurs Guide to Outsourcing, and you'll see here that I cover off why we should be doing it and the things that I've talked about so far, some of those common myths, and go into a bit more detail about how you can get over those. But then I do go into more detail about the case matrix here. So if you want to get more information on that and different ways that you can implement it, then I won't go through all this PDF, but basically the PDF sort of explains it in a lot more detail. So that is a free guide that you can get. When you click on that link, you're just going to go through to a page that looks something like this. So just drop in your name and email, and then the PDF will be dropped into your inbox immediately afterwards. So That's if you want to learn a bit more about the case matrix. But in any case, let me just continue on then, because once you've decided that, yes, this is something that's for you, and you've got an idea of, yeah, maybe there are some things that I could start to outsource, bearing in mind that you don't have to commit to anything like this on a long-term, ongoing basis right from the beginning. You can totally take it at your own pace. What I will say is when you start to do it a little bit, you'll almost immediately see the benefit, because suddenly you realize, oh yeah, I was actually, I was maybe running, at full speed, but actually just by freeing up a couple of hours, as I mentioned before, you end up with the time to spend on those other things that actually drives things forward a lot quicker. So you will find that as you start doing this, that you'll probably want to do it more. But anyway, let's just take a look then at the different platforms. There we go. I mentioned that already. Get the free guide. The link is in the description. And then let's take a look then at the platforms. And in the course, which I'll talk about in a moment, there are 3 platforms which I recommend and which I use, and those sort of fit into different areas of that matrix. And the first one is onlinejobs.ph. Links to all of these are in the description as well. But this is great for sort of those, first of all, quadrant 1, admin tasks, but then you certainly can find skilled support from onlinejobs.ph as well, and then also for sort of building out a team. Now, the PH, by the way, in onlinejobs.ph, that .ph is the top level domain for the Philippines, and so pretty much all of the workers on there are from the Philippines, and there is a number of reasons for this. First of all, there's a great sort of work ethic, great language skill there, so there's no trouble with English language, but there is a sort of differential in terms of wages in the Philippines compared to Europe, US, and so on. So you can find more cost-effective team members on onlinejobs.ph than perhaps you could locally. So with wages ranging from a few dollars an hour and upwards, you can find really talented people that are going to be a valuable part of your team. And yeah, it's a great source for that. So actually, we'll look at how these different platforms fit into the matrix a little bit later. But this is where you're going to be finding people on a part-time or full-time basis. So you can take people on, as I say, for a couple of hours a week. But there are people there that are looking for full-time roles, or it could start part-time and then grow into a full-time role as well. And in the course, I talk about the actual process of finding somebody, onboarding them, and then giving them a sample task to try out and see how they fit in, and finding the right person for the right role really is what I focus on in the course as well. So then the next platform is Fiverr. Now, this is slightly different to onlinejobs.ph because it's basically for freelancers, and think of it like a storefront for different products, for different freelancing products, because what they have on Fiverr is, somebody will have a product which is, I will design your thumbnail for YouTube, or I will set up your Facebook advertising campaign, I will do this. And so they've got these sort of products, and basically you go onto Fiverr and do a search for whatever it is you're looking to do. And let's say logo, for example. I recently did a complete renaming, rebranding of the Take One Tech Academy to become the Digital Stage Academy. And I wanted a new logo and a whole brand guide for it because I was wanting to change the look of it. And ordinarily, that's something that I would have spent time on myself and really tweaked for days, if not longer. And it would have taken me a long time to create that logo because of my own mental deficiencies, shall we say, where I tend to go off on these things and want to spend a long time working on them. Well, what I actually did was I just went to Fiverr instead. I had an idea for the logo. I provided the seller with an idea for the logo. They came back with something that was actually infinitely better. And within 48 hours from the point of me initiating them and then having a slight bit of back and forth when they sent the first drafts through and me responding to it, within 48 hours, but only about 30 minutes total of my time, I'd got an entire logo, I'd got an entire brand guide, I'd got some animated logos and everything as well. And it was all done for, about $200. It was actually less than that, but I gave them a handsome tip because I was just really blown away with their service and what they'd done for me. So, basically for the cost of well, for a really relatively low cost, it saved literally days of my time. So Fiverr's great for that. Now, Upwork is similar to Fiverr. First of all, I should say Fiverr's great for freelancers. For it's project-based, and it's kind of finite. By definition, you're buying a specific product, which is, you know, a certain cost, and it's a fixed price. So it's great for those things that you just need to get done. And coming back to this idea of commitment, you're not actually committing to anything more than the product that you buy for them. The other one then is Upwork. Now, this is similar to Fiverr in that it is sort of project-based, but it's more sort of bespoke projects. So whilst you can find people on Upwork that are offering the same kind of thing, you know, I will design your advertising campaign for $500 or whatever it is, they also are more for sort of bespoke projects. So you might have a mid to long-term project, which is creating some new platform or something like that. Then Upwork's going to be great for something like this. And you can also find highly skilled people on there. So typically you'll find that onlinejobs.ph, I've talked about the relative cost differential there in terms of wages. That's going to be on the lower end. But with Fiverr, it's also going to be relatively low compared to hiring locally. Upwork has really got the whole range of people on there because it's not just in locations geographically where there is this sort of wage differential. You could well be finding a freelance graphic designer in your town, for example. So there are all kinds of different skilled people on there. So hourly rates might be, you know, the $5, $10, $20 an hour, but equally you can find people on Upwork with, you know, $800, $900,000 an hour hourly rates that are experts in their field. So really Upwork, I would say, is, you know, a sort of different type of platform, basically. So those are the three platforms. So let's take a look at where those actually fit then into that matrix. And I personally think that if you are sort of new to this, if you're a bit apprehensive, if you've recently dismissed those 5 myths that we talked about, then actually onlinejobs.ph is a great place to start because of the fact that you can start with just a couple of hours a week. You can start with those low revenue impact general expertise tasks, and it can just help to start to free up your time. However, onlinejobs.ph will actually also fit into those other 2 quadrants. So it could well be that you take on somebody to begin with, but then they sort of become a broader part of your team, or you take on more people. If you're looking to build a larger team out in the long run, as you see the benefit of it, then this is a platform that will really serve you in all levels. Now, when it comes to those separate tasks, separating yourself from the specialized expertise, again, onlinejobs.ph, you can find experts in various different fields in there to take off some of those things. So I'm working with a graphic designer, for example, something that I love doing, but it's a graphic designer that I found on onlinejobs.ph, and it's actually really refreshing to be able to just offload some of the stuff that I'm doing, and it just gets done rather than taking up my time. And by the way, you may think, well, if it's something you love doing, aren't you giving something up by, getting somebody else to do that? Wouldn't it be nice to be able to focus on things you love? Well, I'm talking about where you've got your core level of expertise, your core thing that you hopefully love doing as well. And I feel very fortunate that I found my ikigai, the thing I love doing, the thing that you can get paid for, the thing that people need, and whatever the other one is. There's another quadrant to that. And something you're good at, something you get paid for, something that the world needs, and something else. But anyway, I feel like I found that. So I actually love every aspect of it. So although I'm potentially giving up something I love, I'm also still then have more time to focus on something else I love in the business. So I'm lucky in that respect. But Fiverr is great for these things as well because of the fact that it's sort of finite. Talking about, the reason for me putting these things in this order, the number 1 is obvious, but 2 and 3, you could say, well, maybe could give some general expertise, stuff that's having a high revenue impact. The reason I've put it in this sense is so that you are just getting those low revenue impact tasks off your plate. The reason why Fiverr is a great solution for this is because, coming back to that example I gave of my logo, it was really a no-brainer to just go and buy a I will design your logo and brand guide product for whatever it was, $130 for the original product. And just have that done. It took limited input from me, and yet it was a big thing that was skilled that got done that I wasn't having to do. So Fiverr is a great one for that as well. It may be actually, although I say start with number one, it could be that you've just got a little task like that, and actually just getting it done on Fiverr could be give you the catalyst to starting to do more of this. Now, Upwork does fit into this quadrant as well. You can certainly find people on there because, again, it's skilled people, it's contractors, so it certainly fits in here as well. And then when it comes to the general expertise and that high revenue impact, then again, building a team on onlinejobs.ph. Upwork in particular for these higher revenue impact tasks is great, where you're building like a longer term contract with somebody, a longer term team, certainly more so than Fiverr in that respect. But Fiverr equally could be something that you get people to help with this. So that's how those platforms all fit into that matrix. Oh, that's it. Thanks, Rich. Thanks, Rich. The Ikigai. I knew there was one I was forgetting, and it was the one that I was actually talking about at the time. So Ikigai is this Japanese concept of there are things that you love, things that you are good at, things that the world needs, and things you could be paid for. I got all of them apart from the first one, which was what you love, and that was the whole point I was trying to make. So thanks for that. Finding the intersection of all of those things is when you found like your true purpose. That's the concept of it. So with all of that said, and you have an understanding of where those platforms fit into the matrix, then it just comes into actually implementing this stuff and actually going through the process. And that's exactly why I created the outsourcing masterclass. So the purpose of this, and you can find a link in the description, that will take you through to a landing page. You can get instant access to that as well. So here is the landing page for you. I go into some of the detail about, sort of before and after that you're going to experience, and talk about the matrix in there as well, but I'll leave you to take a look through that. But basically when you go into the training then, what you're going to see is really 6 modules. Now, what I've actually gone through on this live stream is actually really the sort of content that you're going to find in the outsourcing mindset. So this is really prepping everybody for this idea that certainly you are able to do it. They're getting rid of those limiting beliefs. And so I've gone through a lot of the content from module 1 now, but really the work starts when you go into the next module. So I talked about those 3 different platforms. So there is a module entirely on onlinejobs.ph, one on Fiverr, and one on Upwork. And then I go into building a virtual team. But the first step is rather than getting ahead of ourselves on building a virtual team, is actually to just go through the process. Now, when you go into the onlinejobs.ph one, for example, the idea of this is that you're going to go into this course, and as you go through it, you're going to identify some task or something that you want to get done. Excuse me. And then you're actually going to go through these videos step by step, because I literally walk you through the process. Introduction to onlinejobs.ph. Here's how you sign up. Here's how you post a job. Here's how you review your shortlist. The interview process with your applicants. By the way, it's not a traditional interview process. There's a really easy way to do this without even necessarily speaking to somebody, actually, until they've done an initial trial task. I talk about how to go about assigning the tasks to them and the platforms that you can use there. So there's a couple of platforms I talk about. Monday.com and Notion. So I talk about how to sort of get people set up and managing the tasks in there, and then talking about tracking work and confidentiality and so on, if that is a potential issue, and then how to go about paying them, and then the wrap up. So the idea is that if you go through these lessons, you'll come in having gone through module 1, identifying some particular task that is going to be the first thing that you're going to go through and try to get done, and then you're going to go through these videos one by one. And you could literally do the video, pause it, go to implement it, and go to do the next one. So by the end of module 1, you could potentially have hired your first person. And then I've got other modules then that are on those other platforms, and also then a later module which is all about sort of team building and some ways that you can manage your time and your teams. Talk about some particular methodologies in there that I've sort of taken on board in the past and recently that have worked well for managing those virtual teams. So that's all in there as well. So once you've taken on your first person and then maybe see the benefit of it and start to maybe add more people in, then it goes into those management side of things. You can find a link to that course in the description. I should say that today it's for me, it's the 13th of September, but there is a special offer, $100 off, running all the way through to next Thursday, and that is using the offer code FREEDOM at checkout. But actually, you'll see it on the landing page anyway. So down at the bottom of the landing page to sign up, you'll find that you can get that offer code there as well. So that is an introduction to the case matrix. Don't forget, you can get that PDF. And then if you're interested in the course, you can also check out that as well. If anybody's got any questions about either of those, any of those platforms, let me know. Or in broader terms, then let me know about that in the chat as well, or the comments, or the Discord, or wherever you want to reach out to me. I can say that, having had really vast experience of it previously, I almost sort of had to kick myself 3 months ago when I found myself with this state of, I don't like the term overwhelm, not really overwhelmed, but it was just a case of I was having to knock my deadlines further and further back with certain core projects because I was focused on the minutiae. And I thought, well, I already know how to do this, so I should have been doing it sooner. So if you are in any way as a creator, as a solopreneur, finding that you've got too many things on your plate, then I highly recommend that you check out the guide first of all, and then also maybe check out that landing page for the course too. If there are no other questions, though, what I'll do is I will leave a link to some of my other stuff eventually over on that side when I get around to it. And thanks so much for watching. Thanks also to my channel members. I've got a few more channel members to add on yet. I haven't done that yet. I'll do that very soon. Thanks so much for watching. I'll see you again very soon.